You're suing the federal government about your taxes.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is it fair to ask the American people to pay for that?
The president's $10 billion scheme is reportedly coming to fruition.
It would come from Treasury,
It comes from Treasury, which comes from the general fund,
the Treasury general account.
so taxpayers.
Yes.
Tonight, new reporting on Trump's IRS lawsuit and what could be the most corrupt act in the history of the presidency.
Well, there's never been anything like it, in all fairness.
Then the Republican push to eliminate black elected Democrats.
Jim Clyburn, I like him personally, but he does not represent the rest of South Carolina.
Tonight, the new Democratic plan to fight back.
The ghost of the Confederacy has afflicted the United States Supreme Court majority and is invading and haunting the nation right now.
And why is Congresswoman Virginia Foxx under fire for berating her 10-year-old constituent?
I think that was wrong.
And why?
Because the school didn't do anything.
It All In starts right now. Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. It is hard, dear viewer, to keep track of the very, very long list of shady deals and no-bid contracts and outright corrupt crypto schemes that have been the hallmark of the presidency of Donald Trump, particularly this second version of it. But I ask you tonight to pay attention to the one that he appears to be about to pull off, because it's got to be the greatest heist in American history. A direct transfer of billions of your taxpayer dollars directly into the bank account and the pockets of Donald Trump, all dressed up as a settlement of a lawsuit in which Donald Trump is both the plaintiff and also the defendant. It would be a maneuver that could nearly triple his net worth. It is flying under the radar as Trump landed in China today with great fanfare with a delegation of, oh, look, billionaires and family members in tow. The chosen MAGA elites looking for overseas deals. All of this happening as the Trump administration is literally making your life harder and more expensive with wars and tariffs. But none of that has stopped Trump from trying to get his hands on more of your money. The New York Times, citing 3 people familiar, reports that in the coming days, Trump's Department of Justice may pay out $10 billion or more to Donald Trump to settle his lawsuit against the IRS. Trump filed that suit back in January, saying the agency should have done more to prevent the leak of his tax returns during the 2020 presidential campaign. The president, in effect, sued himself for more than $10 billion, or he sued the government he controls. $10 billion, by the way, is nearly the entire annual IRS budget. And those dollars, if paid out, would come from the U.S. Treasury, which he also oversees. Now, this is so novel, I don't really know how you characterize it legally. Like, we're out past the frontier. Whether legal or not, I am of the strong opinion, and I think many would be also, that this is an attempt at the largest theft ever by an American politician. Plainly, flagrantly, blatantly, in plain daylight. It is a conflict of interest so enormous, the term itself, conflict of interest, hardly begins to capture what's happening. In fact, get this. Last month, a federal judge in the case, a woman named Kathleen Williams, she's the federal judge who's been assigned this lawsuit, right? She gave Trump's private lawyers and the government's attorneys, right, because it's Trump's lawyers and the DOJ attorneys that he controls, she gave them until May 20th to come back and explain how the case isn't a scam to enrich Trump. She's like, wait a second. The Constitution requires cases or controversies, but I don't see one here. She writes, although President Trump avers he is bringing this lawsuit in his personal capacity, he is a sitting president, and his named adversaries are entities whose decisions are subject to his direction. She added, this raises questions here over whether the parties, Donald Trump and Donald Trump, are truly antagonistic to each other. They would have to be antagonistic to each other for this to actually be a case or controversy as defined by the U.S. Constitution. What the judge is saying is like, I don't think this is actually a real case. It can't be, you're on both sides. So the lawyers have one more week to file briefs that would convince the judge to let Trump's $10 billion lawsuit continue. But today, sources tell the Times, quote, White House and Justice Department officials have in recent days been exploring ways to potentially settle the suit before that deadline. Essentially find a settlement that would be agreeable to the plaintiff and the defendant, Donald Trump, and shovel tons of cash over to him in return for him dropping the suit. The mob has a word for that: shakedown.
President Trump right now is suing the IRS for a $10 billion shakedown. Think about it. He's suing the federal government that he controls. A check for $10 billion that he hopes to secure that will go to Donald Trump, signed by Donald Trump. And who's paying the check? The American taxpayers.
And think of it again. Your taxes, they come out of your paycheck every week, or you wrote a check April 15th. Some part of that is going to end up in Donald Trump's bank account. No one has ever taken as much money in the history of the nation as Donald Trump is attempting to hoover up from the federal government right now. I don't think there's ever been a $10 billion theft. $10 billion. That's the same amount in child care subsidies that Trump froze last year. $10 billion is almost enough to fund federal disaster relief for a year. It is enough to fund the entire National Park Service, one of the great jewels of this nation, for 5 years. You could fund the Peace Corps for 20 years. It could all go straight into the Trump family coffers. I am telling you, there is no scale or precedent for corruption like this in the United States. It would put every other Trump grift to shame. The gold Trump phones that they sold 590,000 of and not a single one is shipped a year later. The just announced Trump Tower in Tbilisi, Georgia. The bid for defense contracts by a drone company that 2 of Trump's sons are backing. The Truth social media empire that lost $406 million in the last quarter alone. The quid pro quo pardons. The dirty crypto token payments from foreign states. And they appear to have gotten sweetheart deals on AI chips, Trump stakes, and on and on and on and on. All of it pales in comparison to this single ploy for $10 billion. Here's a chart of Trump's estimated net worth over time from Forbes. You can see he has already tripled his wealth since coming back in the office. See those big bars over there on that side? That's the Trump presidency. It's been pretty good for his bottom line. He's up to $6.5 billion, billions of dollars while president. If his government settles his lawsuit the way he wants, his wealth would nearly triple again. This is the president backing a truck up to the doors of Fort Knox, demanding entry, piling gold bars into the back of the truck, and driving off saying, "See ya, suckers." To be clear, Trump doesn't even deny that he will pressure his subordinates to pay him off. He just claims the money will go to a good cause.
Is this a good use of taxpayer money? You can't leak documents. And any money that I win, I'll give it to charity, 100% to charities. Charities that will be approved by government or whatever.
You're going to tell them to pay you, though? 'Cause you're the boss.
Well, what I would do, tell them to pay me, but I'll give 100% of the money to charity. I don't want any of that money.
You take it out of the system. A couple more questions here.
No, I'm putting it back into the system.
Yeah.
If I give money to American Cancer Society, I will give 100% of the money away to charity. I don't want any of it.
$30 trillion debt, and we're going to take $10 billion out of the system?
Well, I mean, you give it away anyway. They give away a lot of money.
Okay, it'll go to charity. Think for a second. Is Donald Trump going to give billions of dollars of money to charity? The same Donald Trump that we know? The guy who always tells the truth? The guy who promised to make things cheaper for you? The guy who's going to lower cost on day one? Remember that? How's that promise look today? New Labor Department data released Tuesday showed inflation's gotten so bad it is eating up all the gains Americans made in wages for the first time in 3 years. We got producer price numbers today that were eye-poppingly high. Prices keep going up as Trump's bumbling war on Iran makes oil and gas and fertilizer and life-saving medicines rarer and more expensive. The diesel cost is pushing up costs throughout the entire system. New records for diesel costs throughout the Midwest for the second day in a row. This is what life looks like under a Mad King. Every day brings a new let them eat cake moment. And now as Americans suffer through the war and the economy that Donald Trump imposed on them, again, unilaterally, by himself, didn't have to do it, did it. He is scheming nearly full time about helping himself to billions more of your money. It has never been clearer who he's looking out for. Dan Pfeiffer served as senior advisor to President Obama. He's now the co-host of Crooked Media's Pod Save America. Miles Taylor was the chief of staff at the Department of Homeland Security during Trump's first term. He now runs Defiance.org, group mobilizing voters to oppose Trump. They both join me now. Miles, let me start with you. You worked in the first Trump administration. You wrote that anonymous op-ed in the New York Times saying basically I'm among a group of people who are trying to stop him from the inside. That was very controversial and polarizing, right? There are people who hated you because they were Trump loyalists. There are people who were like, what do you mean you're trying to stop him from the inside? This is BS. And I thought of that moment today because one of the big differences between Trump 1.0 and 2.0 is it's clear there's no one telling him no inside. Yeah. And if there were ever a clearer example of that to me, it is this. There is no one saying you cannot give yourself $10 billion from the U.S. Treasury.
Well, and Chris, to that question, I often say to people who, come up and say, thank you for speaking out. Look, don't thank me or any of us. We did the bare minimum you're supposed to do as a government employee. Tell the boss not to break the law and don't break it yourself. We weren't heroes for doing that. We were people doing the bare minimum you pay us to do in government. Mr. President, you can't break the law or violate the Constitution, and neither should we. This is the best evidence we have seen the entire second Trump presidency that there is no one there to tell him that. Because as you said in the opener, Chris, this is set to be the biggest heist in American history. Not the biggest heist of the presidency, not the biggest heist in politics, the biggest heist definitionally in American history. And when Donald Trump says he's going to put this money in charity, it's the same Donald Trump, by the way, who right here in the state of New York, they shut down his charity because he was spending the money on his lawyers and on portraits for himself. We're supposed to believe that guy. But I mean, real talk, Chris, he should not spend the presidency lining his pockets. He should be preparing to line his prison cell. I don't mean that hyperbolically. He is guaranteeing by doing things like this that he'll spend the rest of his days after this administration in courtrooms, in depositions, and potentially incarcerated. This is a corrupt act. This is a high crime and misdemeanor. And anyone who's enabling it, I would tell them right now, because I've been in your shoes inside his administration when he asked me to do illegal things, don't bet that this man's going to pardon you.
Dan, we Chris Murphy on last night, and he said this, and a lot of people said this. That, I think a lot of people have struggled to get their arms around the corruption here. It's in some ways it's so. I made the joke earlier this week that in the Biden administration, the reflecting pool no bid contract would be a huge story. Right. Like that in the absence of other scandals, just the reflecting pool, the $13 million would be a huge story. No bid contract. Where did it come from? We don't need it. Everything's sort of blown out of the water because of how big it is. It does seem to me, though, that when you look at that chart of his net worth, you combine the ballroom, the reflecting pool, and this, that there is something starting to set in with people. And maybe I'm telling myself that as a hopeful story. Do you think that's true?
I do. In 2020, the DNC, the Democratic Party consultants went around and told everyone, based on the research, that voters did not buy an anti-corruption message against Trump. Calling Trump corrupt did not work. And that's in part because people kind of priced corruption into the baseline with Trump. Democrats weren't really credible messengers on anti-corruption stuff in that moment. But we're in a very, very different environment now, right? The corruption matters to people a lot more when gas is $4.50, when prices are up, when the economy is not going well, and the president's broken his core promise. Because it's all an example of the president was elected to lower prices. That's why people put him in office. He is not doing it. What is he doing instead? He's doing a bunch of corrupt stuff to make himself richer, to make his rich friends richer. And that is a very, very powerful argument that I think could have real purchase in the midterms.
It's also, Miles, it's also not the case, when you take a step back, it's it's not just a coincidence, things are bad in the country and economic management is terrible, and also he's enriching himself. This is the pattern, right, of authoritarianism, of declining democracies. Here's just a few headlines. Putin, many people think, is secretly one of the richest men in the world. Erdogan has made, according to independent reports, billions of dollars. Xi Jinping, the Orban family, right, in Hungary. It's not just an accident that you have this terrible management of the actual state and the kind of pillaging, that's what Democratic decline looks like.
It's absolutely what it looks like. But here's the difference. The difference is, in a lot of those places, they got away with it. And again, here's the message to people inside that administration. I'm telling you, do not count on the mob boss to protect you. You will not get away with it. He may try, but John Mitchell went to prison for Richard Nixon. And I'm sure John Mitchell and the others who were prosecuted didn't feel like they got a good end of that deal.
Yes.
There are people who know things right now who are refusing to speak up, who are going to end up in a bad situation on the back end of this. I mean, as the New York Times reported a couple weeks ago with the war in Iran, advisors literally say they're scared to tell the president the truth when he's making bad decisions. This is not just a bad decision. We're talking about illegality of an extraordinary scale, corruption of the highest order.
Yeah, and there's also the, I want to play for you, Dan, Mike Johnson. I mean, obviously, like, the president doesn't care about the midterms in a traditional sense, in the sense of, like, persuading people to vote for Republicans. Like, he's given up on that completely. He's not a guy who's staying up at night thinking about the median voter and, like, looking at focus groups, right? This is someone who's like, we're either going to rig it or whatever happens. But if you're Mike Johnson or if you're anyone, like, again, this is so high res compared to everything he's done so far. Here's Mike Johnson essentially dodging it today when asked about it. Take a listen.
Do you think that the Justice Department ought to settle the president's $10 billion lawsuit over the leak of his tax returns? Is that appropriate? Is there a conflict of interest there?
One of the things that is not in my purview is the Department of Justice, okay, and how they evaluate cases and resolution of all that. So I don't know. I haven't thought about that or read into it. I got enough to say grace over every day, okay? So go ask the executive branch about it, all right?
I mean, that's his standard line, but you've got to imagine, just on just sheer politics, that they understand how horrible this would be and look.
Oh, absolutely. Between, raiding the Treasury for $10 billion to the war in Iran, spiking gas prices, to the $1 billion for the ballroom, to all of it is just putting more and more weight on the House Republicans. And I would like to have Mike Johnson's job in the sense that he has a very, very limited purview, as far as I can tell, and never has to read the news and be aware of anything. But in the back rooms where they're making the decisions for the midterms and the Republican super PACs, the NRCC, this has to drive them bananas, because it's always one step forward, two steps back with Trump.
I want to play this last bit. Every time Trump's confronted with this, Miles, he kind of does a sort of like coy sitcom sort of routine around it because it's so preposterous. So every time he says about it, like, hey, isn't that a trip? I'm on both sides of the case. It's kind of his deal. This is him. This is back in January when the reports first surfaced. Here he is talking about paying himself. Take a listen.
I have to work out some kind of a settlement. I'm supposed to work out a settlement with myself. I think what we'll do is do something for charity. We're thinking about doing something for charity where I'll give money to charity. We can make it a substantial amount. Nobody would care because it's going to go to numerous, very good charities.
Again, he's workshopping. How am I going to get away with this is really what it looks like.
I think we need to, Dan should do this on Pod Save America. We'll do it on Defiance Daily. We need to loop that previous video of House leaders laughing about this around Mike Johnson. Ha, 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 ha. And Donald Trump trying to figure out what he's going to do, because they all think this is funny.
Yeah.
And it's not funny. And this is remarkable to watch because we've already forgotten about the first version of this, the version of the $500 million jet that Donald Trump got, that he's apparently renovating with $1 billion of taxpayer money that he's going to give to charity. The charity is his presidential library, the library that's going to fund everything he does after he leaves office. And that now pales in comparison to what's happening here.
Not only that, they've run the exact same play with the ballroom, which was, don't worry, you're not going to have to pay for the ballroom. Oh, we need $1 billion in security improvements. So the check always comes due, just not for Donald Trump, just for you. Dan Pfeiffer, Miles Taylor, thank you both. Don't forget to catch Dan and highlights of all the Crooked Media podcasters, including my incredible wife, Kate Shaw, on Strict Scrutiny. That is all on MSNOW, Saturday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Coming up, more proof Donald Trump has sent the economy spiraling in the wrong direction. Sir Cory Booker joins me next.
Do you feel richer or poorer in the second Trump administration?
Oh, poorer. Everybody is. Only the rich are surviving right now. And the rest of us are getting more and more in debt.
A day after Trump told reporters, quote, "I don't think about Americans' financial situation as his war with Iran squeezes everyone's pockets at home. Gas prices are topping $4.50 on average, the highest in 4 years. Wholesale prices just made their biggest monthly jump since 2022. Remember, that was when we were in the real grips of that post-COVID inflation bout, which indicates more price hikes ahead for consumers. Speaker Mike Johnson's trying to assure everyone everything will be magically fine and that Trump really does care.
I can tell you the president thinks about Americans' financial situations. I talk to him on average twice a day, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, and we talk about it constantly. And the conflict with Iran has put a little damper on that. Now, as soon as that's resolved, I agree with the Treasury Secretary, I agree with the president, you're going to have an alleviation of the pain at the pump, and you're going to have prices come down overall.
Senator Cory Booker is a Democrat in New Jersey, and he joins me now. How much confidence does that give you? I mean, at one level, I don't think it's a crazy thing to say that if the situation in Iran were to resolve, it would bring down gas prices. I think that's actually pretty clear. Still not clear to me how that happens. Do you have any confidence that's in the offing right now?
Look, there's no confidence that I have other than the fact that Donald Trump is going to do exactly the opposite of the things he promised the American people. I'll keep us out of wars while he is mired in yet again, like Groundhog Day, another Middle East quagmire that's making situations worse and costing tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money. He said he would lower inflation. He said he would lower grocery prices. He seemed fascinated by the word grocery. He said he was going to lower gas prices. He said he was going to make people's lives more affordable. He has done none of that. He's done the exact opposite. And then he told us the truth yesterday. I don't care about what Americans' number one issue is, their struggles, their suffering, their pain. What I care about is my ballroom, no bid contracts for the reflecting pool, and of course my settlement, my multi-billion-dollar settlement from the IRS. A man who said he was going to lower costs and drain the swamp has actually raised costs, and he's trying personally to drain the Treasury into his pocket. This is a president that needs to be checked.
On that multi-billion-dollar settlement, you know, it occurs to me, I remember covering city politics in Chicago particularly. This was the case where sometimes there would be settlements with law enforcement officials who had engaged in misconduct, and sometimes very serious. There had been a lawsuit. The city was going to settle, right? So this isn't self-dealing. Very different. But the city council would have to approve it. They'd have to be like, yes, we're going to settle for this amount of money. It does strike me as kind of crazy that Congress has the power of the purse. Like, can the president unilaterally cough over $10 billion? And shouldn't Congress have something to say if he tries to do that?
Well, let's be clear. This Republican Congress is not doing its constitutional duty. I listened to your clip of the speaker saying that's not, if you want to worry about the executive, that's their job, not my job. Well, your job explicitly is to provide a check and balance on the executive, is to provide oversight and accountability to the executive. Yes, actually, that is your job. And so this is a complete surrender. They're really laying down, practicing an advanced form of yoga, twisting and contorting themselves to bend over backwards and do whatever Donald Trump says they should do, which is not how our government is supposed to work. And so if they don't want to lead, get the hell out of the way, because there's a lot of Democrats that want to hold him accountable, to actually have transparency and oversight and have hearings on these things, and frankly want to get him focused on what he said he was going to be focused on, which is bringing down people's prices.
One more follow-up on that. I mean, it does occur to me that, like, there should be a vote somewhere. Someone's got, if he's going to pay himself a huge amount of money, the Department of Justice, someone's got to appropriate that, right? I mean, I guess I'm asking this as a sort of technical question. Like, does it work that the Department of Justice has a kind of settlement slush fund they can just take money out of, maybe, and they won't need a vote? But it seems like, to the extent that congressional Democrats could force a vote on this, they should force a vote on it.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at every single way to stop this. But the frustrating thing I've had in this last year is these majorities of Republicans, there are a lot of very common sense things that should not be allowed to happen. The President of the United States should not be allowed to give as many no-bid contracts as he is. Right. His wife should not be able to get a big-time movie deal. He should not be able to really intimidate lawyers, law firms, movie companies, CBS from settling baseless defamation suits. Every time I turn around, this president is finding a new way to grift off the American people and do things that shouldn't be allowed just to do. In fact, my Republican colleagues sometimes have said the exact opposite, and then he goes and does it, and then they run to defend him, like, you know, giving pardons to people that savagely beat police officers who were trying to protect that very chamber. So we are beyond the point at which people have to ask, is this right? It is not right. This is dead wrong, and Congress should do something. The problem we have is the complicity, and frankly, they're fully implicated in everything that Donald Trump is doing because they're saying and doing nothing about it.
Well, in normal times, you would have a lot of people on the Hill calling the White House to say, you can't do this, it looks terrible, and we have a midterm that we're already, you know, facing an uphill battle. In this midterms, clearly they think the ace in their card is mass redistricting through Republican-controlled states, particularly now in the states of the South, where they are explicitly targeting basically every last black Democrat in that region and every last Democrat. I want to play you something that Congressman Norman said, Ralph Norman, in South Carolina about his colleague, Jim Clyburn, who might be targeted to be essentially have his district erased. The governor of the state of South Carolina has expressed interest today in calling a special session to do just that. Here's what Congressman Norman had to say about getting rid of Congressman Clyburn's district. Take a listen.
Jim Clyburn, I like him personally, but he does not represent the rest of South Carolina, which is conservative. His district is close to 47% African American.
Kind of interesting there. He doesn't represent the rest of South Carolina. Obviously, he doesn't. It's just one congressional district. He's not a senator. His district, it's conservative. His district is close to 47% African American. What do you take away from that quote?
Well, it sounds like coded bigotry. I mean, that's the first thing that I hear if he thinks somehow that the congressman who has worked with me, frankly, to help disadvantaged farmers, who's worked with me to pass legislation so there has to be more investment in all rural areas, not just his district. Congressman Clyburn is a person who has stood up for not just his district, but has helped the aid of education in the state, public schools, college. I could go on and on about his record of service. So it's very difficult for me to hear language like that in the context of 6 people on the Supreme Court who just sent us back to post-Reconstruction era realities that are eviscerating black representation in states with 25, 30, 35% African Americans. And again, the Supreme Court said you can't have intentional bigotry, so we're going to rely often on what is in result racially gerrymandered or racially gerrymandered maps that eliminate racial representation. And so again, enough. There should be enough already to get folks angry, to get folks out working and mobilizing. These are people and leaders in states all across this country. They don't care about fairness. They don't care about democracy. Some of them seem to care, frankly, or carry the flag, not the American flag, but a flag of division, divisiveness, demeaning, and degrading minority groups. But whatever their motivations are, it's wrong. And the maps that they're drawing set us back, not forward. They're not fair. So I don't need to listen to another person try to justify what they're doing in many of these states. I've decided to fight like hell to stop them from upending this democracy, the fairness, the kind of values we believe that people should have fair representation. And I'm hoping that this is a midterm election that's not about Democrat and Republican, it's about right or wrong, and that we have a movement election to finally show a party that is so complicit in the corruption of our nation, so complicit in the distortion of our democratic principles, that most Americans, 60, 70, 80% of them, throw them out of office and begin to have more accountable government that actually serves the people.
60% benchmark would be something we haven't seen in a long time in this country, but there's a lot we haven't seen in a long time in this country. Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, thank you very much. We'll be right back.
It Cosmetics fits a lot into a bottle of 7